action!
The Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular at the Disney MGM Studios takes 20,000 visitors a day through a demonstration of the most action-packed outdoor adventures ever created. This attraction is designed and choreographed in true Raiders of the Lost Ark style. The heroes are in constant danger with no way out.
Journey to a place where your imagination is your passport and your destination, other worlds. Where in one you can roar like the king of all beasts or swing your majestic trunk and sound your trumpet across the great plains of Mother Africa. In another, you're transported back 65 million years to come face to face with prehistoric beasts.
The first sight to greet us is one of the famous Disneyland trains of the 1860s.
And Disneyland passenger train, the Big Ripley, now arriving on track number 1 from a trip around Walt Disney's Magic Kingdom.
If you ask me, there's something special about riding an attraction that has been present at a Disney park since the very day it opened, whether that be 1955 at Disneyland, or most recently 1998 at Disney's Animal Kingdom. Because, you know, when a park first opens, it's the 1.0 version of that theme park. Animal Kingdom 1.0 is very different from the Animal Kingdom we have today. Disneyland in 1955 was extremely different from the Disneyland in even just, say, 1960. And while some rides come and go, some opening day rides remain where they stood from the very beginning. They're still open and they're still operating the very same way. That is, mostly. Over the years, a lot of opening day rides see changes happen. Whether it's a small update here or there, maybe a scene change, maybe something new added, or whether it's a name change, or a big complete overhaul, a retheme, or an updated version of that existing attraction, I wanted to walk through some of these changes with you today, my friend, and go through some remnants of these original opening day versions of these attractions that are still around, that still exist in the rides today. And it's not just one example here or there. Disney likes to leave a lot of things just abandoned in their rides. So we have a few to talk about. And I guess we should start at the beginning, at the very first Disney park, Disneyland in Anaheim. Now, there are a lot of opening day rides left at Disneyland because the main appeal of Disneyland is nostalgia. Wanting to sort of step back in time to whether that be 1950 or 1960 or the American frontier or even further back into the jungles of Adventureland, Jungle Cruise, the Disneyland Railroad, the Autopia. Those are all opening day rides, and there are still some remnants of 1955 Disneyland in there if you look close enough. If you really, really look closely, like I am at you right now. We'll start at the front of the park with the Disneyland Railroad. Now, while it seems that the Disneyland Railroad has existed as it is now since 1955 for 70 years, that's actually not the case. As is the case with many of the other opening day attractions that we'll be talking about in this video, the Disneyland Railroad has had pieces. Little tiny bits of it, or big bits of it, switched out, changed, or rerouted over the years. For example, when the railroad first opened with the park in July of 1955, there was no Grand Canyon or Primeval World dioramas. Those were added years later, 1958 for the Grand Canyon diorama, and then later in 1966, using recycled pieces of Ford's Magic Skyway from the New York World's Fair for the Primeval World diorama. But the changes go even further than that. One of the biggest reroutings, and I could even go as far to say rethemings of the Disneyland Railroad happened in 2016 when Star Wars Galaxy's Edge began construction. They rerouted the rivers of America and alongside it the Disneyland Railroad in order to make room for the new land. And I say retheming very lightly, by the way. It's not a super big retheming, but they did add some more set dressing, some new set elements to the rivers of America and the Disneyland Railroad as it passes in front of Galaxy's Edge, including the beaver chewing on the bridge that we're going over. Beaver, stop that! Stop! Right now, we're gonna die. It's trying to kill us. There are homages to earlier attractions that used to be part of the Rivers of America, namely a keelboat from the Mike Fink keelboats that opened in December of 1955. Not quite an opening day ride. Let's move on. You also have the remnant of the old track from Mine Train Through Nature's Wonderland, the old e-ticket from Frontierland, Also not an opening day attraction. What are we doing here? All right, how about this? When the attraction first opened, when the Disneyland Railroad first opened, its name wasn't the Disneyland Railroad. It was the Santa Fe and Disneyland Railroad. Santa Fe Railway being an actual railway company sponsoring the attraction. Again, we'll see that sponsorship system pop up a couple times in this video, so just keep that in the back of your head. But of course, as sponsorships tend to do, it was dropped in 1974 and all of the Santa Fe branding came down, but not all of the signs. You know that little square thing above the Disneyland Railroad sign that just has like a coat of arms for the Disneyland Railroad nowadays, just a Disneyland Railroad logo? That used to hold the Santa Fe logo. That sign kind of has no reason to exist. You have a smaller Disneyland Railroad sign above a bigger Disneyland Railroad sign, but it used to be the sponsor plaque, the sponsor marquee. And instead of taking it down when the sponsorship was dropped, they just replaced the sign. Even the names of some of the locomotives reference the Santa Fe sponsorship. The CK Holiday is named after Cyrus Kurtz Holiday, the first president of the Santa Fe Railroad. And the EP Ripley, named after Edward Payson Ripley, was the 14th president of the railway. And then you have the Ernest S. Marsh, who was the president of the Santa Fe railway system during the construction of Disneyland all the way through 1966. So there are little bits and pieces of the original Disneyland and Santa Fe Railroad left if you know where to look, mainly signs and names of trains. Now let's go ahead and stay on this railroad and ride it all the way to Tomorrowland. Then we're gonna disembark because we want to go to Tomorrowland for this next entry on the list. Tomorrowland is a weird land. It's simultaneously one of the most popular lands in the entire park, while also being one of the most underutilized lands at Disneyland. It's a darn shame that the state of Tomorrowland isn't really a big factor because people still visit it all the time, which I guess is kind of a good thing. I don't know, it's confusing. It's like a paradox, not those ones though. Now Tomorrowland is interesting. It's sort of its own beast when it comes to lands and what opened on what days when it comes to the Disney parks or Disneyland in general. A lot of Tomorrowland wasn't ready for opening day. That's why it had a lot of museum exhibits, and Flight to the Moon did not open on July 17th, 1955. That would be later, but there is an attraction that remnants still exist of to this day that was open on opening day of Disneyland, and that, my friends, is not the Autopia, but Circarama USA. That's right, my friends, a Circle Vision movie. Y'all know about O Canada over at the Canada Pavilion or Reflections of China at Epcot? Those are Circle Vision movies, and they're newer Circle Vision movies. You stand in a big circular theater, and the movie plays in a big circular screen all around you. It sort of feels almost simulatory. You can get a little bit of motion sickness, but it's not too bad. It's a lot of fun. Circarama is an earlier version of a Circle Vision movie, and it existed where Buzz Lightyear's Astro Blasters exists today. And you can tell because the building for Buzz Lightyear's Astro Blasters is still that circular shape. Here's a clip. Specifically over here to these murals on the wall, you can see a nice little transition between Buzz and Space Mountain here with these Space Ranger ships piloting toward the space stations from Space Mountain. But did you know underneath these panels lies a different kind of mural? That's right, a mural based solely on the old, abandoned People Mover. Okay, I don't know where to start. Dallin from the past was wrong. It wasn't based on the People Mover. It was visible from the People Mover for sure. The old Mary Blair mural sits underneath that Buzz Lightyear / Space Mountain mural I was just showing you. However, we're not talking about the mural. We're talking here about the shape, the curvature, should I say, of the Buzz Lightyear show building. You look at it really closely, you can see what remains of that old Circle Vision theater, that big circular theater. And it becomes even more apparent when you drag out an old map from 1955 and overlay it with a current map that we have of Tomorrowland, of Buzz Lightyear, and you can really see the remnants of that old Circle Vision theater. But what about on the inside? What remains of that theater inside the actual show building? Well, unfortunately, the answer is not a lot. Almost nothing. If you look above and behind you when you exit the light tunnel on the attraction, you can see the sun and moon, parts of the old facades from Circle Vision 3D. Not Circarama, not the opening day version of the attraction, but it is from a previous incarnation, which I guess doesn't count for this video, that's fine. The theater would be used for a portion of the queue for the Rocket Rods, you know, the ride that broke the People Mover, and I just love these pictures of the Rocket Rods queue. They're just so liminal, so unnerving in a weird way. But just looking at the blueprints, the track layout for Buzz Lightyear Astro Blasters, there is a little portion of the track that follows the Circle Vision Theater. It doesn't go beyond the walls, which I think is pretty funny, but for the most part, everything that you see in Buzz now is completely separate from what came before. Not even, dare I say, a people mover track passing through the old pre-show room for the rocket rods. Okay, I'm done. We're leaving Disneyland. No more people mover talk. The only thing that remains of Disneyland's past, that opening day Circa-Rama movie, is the shape of the building itself, which I honestly kind of think it's kind of funny. Now, my friends, we are leaving Disneyland and journeying to the second Disney park that was ever built, the Magic Kingdom in Orlando. And the Magic Kingdom is pretty good when it comes to opening day attractions. There are a lot of them. The Haunted Mansion is an opening day ride at the Magic Kingdom. The Tomorrowland Speedway, then known as the Grand Prix Raceway. The Jungle Cruise, of course, you gotta have a Jungle Cruise. But I want to look mainly at a ride that no longer exists, but there are still remnants scattered throughout the park. And that, my friends, is the Skyway. The Skyway from Fantasyland to Tomorrowland, and not Disneyland's, even though it was called the same thing and it ran between the same lands. It's a little confusing. The Skyway at the Magic Kingdom was a sort of short-lived attraction. I never got to ride it, but it was fun. I imagine. I imagine it was fun. Now, while the sky buckets and the cables, none of those still exist, although there is a sky bucket. We'll talk about that in a second. The stations for the Skyway still do. Where are they? Fantasyland and Tomorrow. Weren't you listening? We'll start in Fantasyland, even though the Haunted Mansion is right next door, and I'm very tempted to just talk about that forever. We can. It is an opening day ride, so I will be back. We are going to go under the bridge, connecting Memento Mori to Columbia Harbor House, and enter Fantasyland, and then just make a beeline to the bathroom. Not because we had one too many corn dogs, but because this is what remains of the old Fantasyland Skyway station. No, I'm not kidding. It's the bathrooms. Here is a picture of the old Skyway station, the entrance, I should say, to the Fantasyland Skyway station. Nice little A-frame there. Let's take a look at the tangled bathrooms, and hey, would you look at that? Yet another A-frame. Now, this isn't me saying that the tangled restrooms were made out of any sort of remaining structure from the Skyway station. I am saying, though, that there is a bit of a similarity there when it comes to the shape of the building. And you know the famous planter in the queue for Mr. Toad's Wild Ride at Disneyland? How it was actually once a pylon for Disneyland's Skyway? Something similar exists at the Magic Kingdom in front of It's a Small World. While in Fantasyland, across from Peter Pan's Flight, you'll find the show building to It's a Small World. And if you move down the path a little bit, just in front of the Lightning Lane, formerly the Fast Pass entrance for It's a Small World, you'll see some cobblestones arranged in a strange circular pattern, a circular formation. This is the same thing as the Mr. Toad's planter. This was formerly a pylon for the Tomorrowland to Fantasyland Skyway. There would be a big pole there transporting sky buckets over your head as you walk to the chalet. And if you journey on down to the Disney style store on the west side of Disney Springs, formerly Downtown Disney, and look up while you're shopping around for the newest, I don't know, Mickey shirt, or perhaps some sort of necklace, you might see an old Fantasyland Skyway bucket right up there on the ceiling, looking up at it, you know, just like the guests back in 1971 would do. Now, is this a legit bucket from 1971 from the opening day of the park? I don't know. It's in really, really good condition, but it does have, funnily enough, a sprinkler down there at the bottom, just in case a fire happens to break out. The Skyway bucket can help with that. Now, I'm fairly certain the old Skyway buckets did not have a sprinkler at the bottom, so it might not be original. However, if you do know, if you're involved with that sort of thing, if you're in the know, please let me know. Is this an original Skyway bucket repurposed with a sprinkler hole just cut out in the bottom, or is this a completely new fabrication? I'm actually extremely curious to learn the truth here. But actually, fans, let us reverse the course of this video here. Let's go back. We are now taking the Skyway from Fantasyland to Tomorrowland, where a much more prominent remnant of the original opening day ride remains, and it's also a bathroom. I don't know what it is with Disney turning Skyway stations into bathrooms, but I guess that's just the running theme here. Just go to the bathroom at the Skyway station. Now, if you remember the park layout, the old Skyway station in Tomorrowland departed from near Space Mountain, the Tomorrowland Light and Power Depot. And the station was, of course, 2 stories because you had to go up in order to board your already sort of elevated Skyway bucket. Now where in Tomorrowland can we find a 2-story building that doubles as a bathroom? bathroom near Space Mountain and the Tomorrowland Launch Depot. That's right, my friends, the Space Mountain bathrooms used to be the Tomorrowland Skyway station. You guys want to see something? There's a lot going on. You gonna see something cool? This right here is the old Tomorrowland Skyway station. You used to get off the Skyway there and go down, and you'd get off the Skyway. It's where they turned both of the Skyway stations into bathrooms, essentially. The Tangled restrooms and now the Space Mountain restrooms. Now, if that clip tells you anything about how much I enjoyed the Disney Enchantment fireworks show that was there for the 50th anniversary of Disney World, I don't know what does. I'm over here filming a bathroom talking about Disney history, and there's a fireworks show happening in the background. I just didn't really care for that show too much. You know what I mean? Now, the Skyway isn't the only opening day attraction at the Magic Kingdom. Obviously, that would be a terrible idea just to have a Skyway being the only ride. No, the Haunted Mansion is also an opening day attraction, unlike over at Disneyland. I told you we'd be coming back to the Haunted Mansion. I can't go a video without talking about that attraction, that or the People Mover, but I promised I was done talking about the People Mover. Let's get into the mansion here for a second. Although it has seen its fair share of changes over the years, there are some remnants of the original mansion still in place. Now, I'm going to show you a picture of the Haunted Mansion as it looked when the park opened in 1971, and you may notice it looks a little different than it does today. An old idea that Walt had where the ghosts would take care of the inside of the mansion, while the Disney Imagineers and the park landscapers and us, the guests, hopefully, would take care of the outside. Here is the Haunted Mansion in 1971. You can see that the lawns and the trees and even the flower beds in front of the actual mansion are very well manicured. It looks very well taken care of. And here is a picture of the Haunted Mansion in the current year, 2025. It's a little bit more overgrown, a little bit more disheveled. I can't find a photo from the exact same angle because they built that canopy to protect guests from the sun while they were waiting in line, and honestly, I'm okay with that. Thank you. Thank you for the shade. Now, some of the changes the mansion has seen over the years include changing out the dark spider hallway for the MC Escher endless staircase scene, the bride, of course, changing to Constance Hatchaway, the digital hitchhiking ghosts at the end, and the horribly placed Hatbox Ghost in the endless hallway. But something that has remained in place and unchanged since opening day in October of 1971 is the portrait of Master Gracey in the foyer when you first enter the attraction. Now, the technology and bulbs, of course, have been updated as the years have gone by, but that is still the Master Gracey portrait that was found in the foyer in 1971. And of course, we can't end the segment on the Haunted Mansion without talking about a remnant of another opening day attraction that is sadly gone, but still remains in spirit. Okay, at the Haunted Mansion. Mr. Toad's Wild Ride still exists at Disneyland, however, it is now gone at Walt Disney World, replaced by the Mini Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, which you can find referenced in a photo that can be seen on the floor of Owl's house, where Mr. Toad is handing the deed to the building over to Owl. But we're not talking about Winnie the Pooh, we're talking about the Haunted Mansion. At the graveyard at the very end of the attraction, this is a very well-known remnant, or reference I should say, one is able to find the tombstone of one Thaddeus Toad right up there at the very, very top of the pet cemetery. Unfortunately, though, not everybody survived all 50 years. Not everyone did. Some of them are buried in a graveyard behind Haunted Mansion. There he is. Oh dear. Now, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride was the subject of a campaign back in the day, Save Mr. Toad. And this was before the widespread adoption of the internet, you know, so you would have people actually showing up in their Save Mr. Toad t-shirts to the Magic Kingdom, trying to get Disney to change their mind on replacing Mr. Toad with Winnie the Pooh, instead of just posting on Twitter. Obviously, that didn't end up working, and we still have Winnie the Pooh to this day, which I think is a shame. Maybe Move Mr. Toad would have been a better slogan. Maybe preserve some parts of Mr. Toad, but what do I know? You know, they ended up replacing the Rivers of America after all. So, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, we're all powerless. But at least there is still one tiny little remnant of that classic Fantasyland dark ride that remains just down the path from where it used to be located, and I think that's kind of cool. And lastly, before we move on to the best Disney park in Florida, I want to turn your attention back to Tomorrowland for the finale. Tying into something that I mentioned earlier with Buzz Lightyear Astro Blaster characters, the show building still sort of being rounded as a remnant of Circarama that was there on opening day, we want to look now at Monsters, Inc. Laugh Floor. Now, I skip the laugh floor almost every time I'm in Orlando. I know there's some charm there, I just don't want to be that guy, and I would rather ride Tron. I want to be on Tron. I want to be in the world of Tron. And I say that as a hater of how many roller coasters Disney's been building lately. But Monsters, Inc. Laugh Floor has its place. It's a fun attraction. And in 1971, in the current show building for Monsters, Inc. Laugh Floor was another Circle Vision movie, America the Beautiful, which was currently operating also in Anaheim at Disneyland in the Buzz Lightyear show building. It, like its twin over at Disneyland, was a Circle Vision movie, and it would come to be replaced over time with other movies, and then eventually The Timekeeper, starring Robin Williams, and then, of course, that would close and make way for Monsters, Inc. Laugh Floor, a traditional theater-style show where you sat down. There wasn't a giant circular screen around you, but if you're sitting in Monsters, Inc. Laugh Floor, take a look around you at the shape of the theater. You may notice that it's a bit circular in appearance. The only difference here is that they've added a stage at one side and closed off just a little bit of the circle. It's a remnant of the old America the Beautiful theater. I don't know what it was with Disney, but I guess they thought that Circle Vision movies were the future. That's why they were all over Tomorrowland in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And only recently has Disney sort of decided to hop off of the Circle Vision train, and even then, they did a new one for the Canada Pavilion, not O Canada, but Canada Far and Wide, as part of the whole new Epcot refresh. And Canada Far and Wide is fine, but again, bring back O Canada, or just, call Martin Short up. Why don't you just call up Martin and have him do a new Canada video? I'm getting sidetracked. The shape of the theater itself is a remnant of the old Circle Vision theater, just like over at Disneyland, and it seems like a shape of attraction Disney won't be able to escape anytime soon. And now, my friends, that is the end of the Magic Kingdom segment of our video. Onward to the best Disney park in, I was about to say America or the world. Maybe not, but definitely the best in Orlando, the experimental prototype community of tomorrow. Now, talking about abandoned Epcot opening day remnants feels like I'm cheating. There's just so much to pick from when it comes to Epcot. Disney really likes to leave almost every corner of Epcot with something abandoned there. They like abandoned little corners and attractions and things in Epcot. There's so many just lost remnants to explore. So why don't we start at the front, at Spaceship Earth. Now, Spaceship Earth is one of the best attractions at one of the best Disney parks in the world. It's a slow-moving Omnimover dark ride through human history. It tells you how we learned to communicate and how we got together and how we built technology up to a point where we could go to the moon, and then you get to create your own future on the way down. And the way down is what I want to talk about specifically, because Spaceship Earth, like a lot of the other attractions we've talked about, has been through many changes over the years. Different sponsors have been in and out of Spaceship Earth, changing the scenes, changing the ending, changing the narrators and the stories. And the most recent version of Spaceship Earth that we have now was sponsored by the communication company Siemens. Now, we haven't really changed anything from Spaceship Earth since Siemens has dropped that sponsorship, aside from just the name disappearing off the sign. But before that, on opening day, it was sponsored by Bell Services, later AT&T. And the ending for that ride was very different. While on the way down from the finale of Spaceship Earth, I used to like to fill out the little survey and see what my future would look like, and hope and pray to God that it captured my face and not some unholy abomination. But now, I kind of just leave that blank and I look around at the sets. The descent sets are very interesting, very abstract, and they actually recently fixed a lightning effect that had been broken for a very long time. You can see it in this clip. But the ending didn't used to be all abstract and lack of set dressing. There used to be scenes during the descent. Actual real-life ride scenes, and it's something I think Disney should consider putting back in. But what were those ride scenes? All right, down to business. The control tower, the moon base, the little building where the lady sat. I don't know, call it what you will. During the initial descent down from the original moon base ending, or I guess finale, of Spaceship Earth, you would pass by a woman in a control tower and an astronaut working on a satellite. The astronaut working on the satellite can still be seen in the mural before you go into Spaceship Earth nowadays, but the control tower is blacked out, and the lady inside if she's still in there, is completely obscured. Although the structure does still remain, when you pass through like the matrix lights, the data points, look behind you as you begin that steep descent down, and you will see the sort of futuristic structure of that control tower. It's still there, collecting a lot of dust, painted with black paint. It's very difficult to get video footage of it just because of how dark it is in that room and how dark the actual control tower itself is, but it is possible. It does tend to show up a little bit better in photographs though. Just remember, turn that flash off. Don't be that person, please. After passing underneath the control tower, where today there's just the lightning strikes and a bunch of darkness, there would be various monitors showcasing communication-related activities. And I know that sounds vague, and it kind of was on purpose. Bell Systems, the sponsor of the attraction, wanted to showcase their brand new state-of-the-art for the 80s telephone communication and maybe even proto-internet style services, and that they did. And, you know, the monitors were great and all, futuristic, maybe, but even closer to the end of the attraction before you return to the station, you would pass through some sort of physical sets with projections and some twinkling lights showcasing a visualization, should I say, of communication. And while I haven't seen any spoilers as I record this video right now, I do hear that there are some similar scenes in the new Test Track 3.0, which is really harkening back to the early days of Epcot, which I appreciate. Only 4 years after opening, the ride would see another transformation in 1986, this time sponsored by the successor to Bell Systems, AT&T. Still about communication, they are a communications company, but this time with a different sign. They got the sign updated. Journalist Walter Cronkite was the narrator for this version, and the monitors were kept during the descent scene, except footage of children was shown, and the attraction got a brand new theme song, Tomorrow's Child, which is why there's footage of children being shown at the end of the ride, just having fun, you know, doing their thing. Good for them. And while Tomorrow's Child is a banger and sort of an unofficial theme song for Epcot, I do think they could have done a little bit more with this version of the descent than they ended up doing. It was very much just a refresh instead of a re-theme. But that would all change in 1994 when Jeremy Irons came in to replace Walter Cronkite as the narrator, and the descent was completely overhauled for the better. While some video segments were kept, and that's fine, you can have some video, different show scenes with actual figures, maybe not full animatronics, but figures were added to the descent, showing video calling and utilizing a very neat Pepper's Ghost effect to just sort of bring the whole message home that communication can change our lives for the better. And as the grand finale, a City of the Future was added, with of course the sparkles running back and forth all over the city in order to represent how people communicate with the futuristic technology that AT&T was offering at the time. I don't know, was their cell service any good in 1994? Was it better than the competition? Leave a comment below if you remember how good the service was for AT&T, landline or otherwise, in 1994. This version of the attraction would then close in 2007, leading the way for the version that we know today, which was originally sponsored by Siemens but is now sponsorless. So, I mean, I guess its days might be numbered. And during the transformation from the Jeremy Irons version to the Judi Dench version that we have today, a lot of the sets during the descent weren't replaced, they weren't taken out, they were just covered up with black curtains to make them invisible to the eye. And again, based on this footage, it worked. It's really dark in there. But even as recently as 2019, which I guess wasn't super recent, time is flying by, if you were to peel back some of those curtains, you may find some remnants from that 1994 version of Spaceship Earth still there, just hidden in plain sight, gathering dust. And according to this thread on the WDW Magic forums, as of 2016, so that was 9 years ago, keep in mind, things might have changed, anything that wasn't taken out of the ride to be replaced with the shapes or the lightning strikes is still there just behind the curtain. And if there are any photographs aside from the ones that I just showed, I would be very, very interested to get my eyes on them. You'll remain anonymous, don't worry. But the main remnant from opening day that is still visible, that's really easy to see with your eyes at least, is still that space station just as you begin to enter that lighting matrix. I highly recommend turning all the way around. It's hard, but it's worth it. But as mentioned earlier, Epcot is essentially cheating when it comes to looking for remnants of opening day attractions. You could throw a stone, and odds are it would land on something that was there on opening day that is now just completely empty. Moving now to the back of the park, to the World Showcase, and even further to the back of the park to the American Adventure, this was also an opening day show at Epcot Center, opened in 1982. And it tells the story of the United States of America from its founding all the way through to the present day. The present day, of course, being like 2009, 2010, 11, roughly the date of the last time they updated the attraction. And that's fine, that's all well and good. It was a simpler time back then. And like most attractions at Epcot on opening day, the American Adventure also had a sponsor, the most American of brands, Coca-Cola. And while, of course, now the sponsorship has since been dropped, you can still find a remnant of that Coca-Cola sponsorship in one of the show scenes. Ironically, it's during the Great Depression, so if Coke wanted to advertise, go for it. Why you're putting your sign in the Great Depression scene, I'm not sure, but that is still there to this day as sort of a leftover sort of piece of that Coca-Cola sponsorship. Now moving on over to Disney's third theme park built in the United States, Disney's Hollywood Studios, formerly Disney's MGM Studios, is a bit weird. It's a bit unique because it's the only Disney park in America that only has one opening day attraction still open and operating the same way it was essentially on opening day, and that's the Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular. Now, I hadn't gone on this attraction or seen this attraction for a very long time, after years of visiting Walt Disney World, but recently, a couple years ago, I finally sat down and watched the Stunt Spectacular, and it's a wonderful time. I highly recommend, if you have the time, to go and sit down and watch the show. It's very fun, very interactive, and it showcases a lot of cool stunts that you couldn't see elsewhere in the park, so it's still a little piece of MGM Studios history that still exists at the park today. But other than that, everything else has changed. Everything else has been torn down or rethemed. The backlot tour is completely gone. The Great Movie Ride is now Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, and then the Animation Academy is the Animation Academy. Unless you want to look at some old abandoned remnants of opening day attractions. That's right, because there are some in the animation courtyard. You just have to go a little bit off the beaten path. Somewhere you might be thinking is backstage. You feel like you shouldn't be allowed back there, but you are. It is a guest-facing area. And that is the tram stop. The Hollywood Studios Backlot Tour took guests through various different movie scenes and sets and prop warehouses used in the production of Disney movies. Guests would board the iconic red trams and take a grand circle tour of the park. Most of the park was actually dedicated to the tram tour when it first opened in 1989. And I'm talking most of the park. You can see here the tram tour highlighted in red. It was basically the entire thing. Now, before the ride entrance was located back in the streets of America, that photo I showed you, that is the second entrance for the Backlot Tour. The original backstage studio tour began in the Animation Academy, or I guess just past it. Wow, look how busy and popular things are in this photo. It's almost like there was a reason to visit Animation Courtyard back in the day. But, that's neither here nor there. If you go underneath the old Hollywood Studios archway into the Animation Courtyard and continue all the way back, all the way to the very back towards Star Wars Launch Bay that may or may not be open, I lost track at this point, head to your left-hand side once you get toward the further end of the courtyard. Go past the companion restrooms. There's no chain up here, notice. This is totally okay to go back here and check this out. That's not off limits. Just don't go past the cast members only sign. That's the limit. If there is a limit, that would be it. So just don't go somewhere you're not supposed to. But you can go up to the sign. You might find a little roundabout, a little turnaround. Where those columns and lights are that you can see, this used to be the original loading area from the original Backlot Studio Tram Tour at MGM Studios before it was moved to the end of Mickey Avenue. This is the original loading area, and all of it is still there and still used. Here is an image of a nice little Mickey topiary and the actual boarding area back in the day, back when it was being used. You can see that the hedges were a bit shorter than they are now, but aside from a coat of paint and the lack of tour trams driving through this area every 15 minutes or 20 minutes, 30 minutes, it remains exactly the same, completely untouched by the years, and I think that's kind of cool. And then tying into that, one of the only remaining pieces, one of the only remaining sets from the Backlot Tour from 1989 is Grand Avenue, formerly the home of Muppet Vision 3D right there on the left-hand side, but now home to a walkway to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, and that's nice, a nice little portal there. Soon to be Monstropolis, that will be turned into part of Monstropolis, by the way. And now, before I get into our next one, it bears a little bit of an explanation, a little bit of backstory. You see, Disney is sort of notorious for reusing face molds for certain animatronics in other attractions. For example, the grandma from the Carousel of Progress is present in the Haunted Mansion. She's the granny in the rocking chair in the Great Hall scene. A lot of the presidents whose faces were sculpted for the Hall of Presidents in Liberty Square were reused for Spaceship Earth. You can see Teddy Roosevelt there just strumming on that lute, just going crazy. There's usually a lot of changes made to either the setting or the character, the costume, obviously in the case of Spaceship Earth, so that it's not super noticeable that these are reused facial sculpts. A more recent alleged example of Disney reusing one of these classic face molds is for Red the Pirate on Pirates of the Caribbean. In 2018, the auction scene in Pirates of the Caribbean received an update, changing around a few of the plot points, adding some new voice lines, and a brand new character, the Pirate Red. Now, we're talking about Hollywood Studios here, so you might know where I'm going with this, but if we zoom in on Red's face and you are an avid writer of the Great Movie Ride, you may recognize her as Jane from the Tarzan scene. Now remember, this is alleged. It may be true, it may not be true, but looking at them side by side, they are very close. Maybe some changes were made here or there, some aesthetic changes to make it look a little bit different, but the sculpt looks pretty close. Another potentially recycled animatronic from the Great Movie Ride is Ripley from the Aliens scene. You can see her here taking cover behind a wall. Now, it's not her face or her costume sculpt, it's actually the frame of the animatronic itself. Might have been reused, and I say might here because I think this one is a little less obvious, a little less credible than the Jane sculpt being used for Red, but you might be able to see it nowadays in Rise of the Resistance, used for Finn's audio animatronic that is taking cover from Stormtrooper fire. It would make sense for them to reuse just the shape, the endoskeleton of this animatronic, but I don't know if it's exactly the same one. What else? The middle of the park used to be a giant hidden Mickey, and now that still is kind of visible if you look at it from a satellite view, but it's really sort of gone by the wayside. And I heard with the construction of the Coco ride over at Disney California Adventure, that giant hidden Mickey is going to go away soon, but we're not to California Adventure yet, okay? Hold on a little bit longer. The cameraman statue that you can find in front of Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway right there at the front of the park is a replica of one from the Warner Brothers lot in California. Sculpted by Andrea and Aldo Favilli, it does have a plaque that contains the opening day dedication speech by Michael Eisner and the logo of Disney MGM Studios. It doesn't say Hollywood Studios, it says MGM Studios. Now, Disney's Animal Kingdom, for being the second newest Disney park Disney has built in the US, has a lot of remnants of opening day attractions, maybe even more than Epcot. Now that I think, no, that's impossible. Epcot has the most. But Animal Kingdom still has a lot. The Discovery Riverboats was a transportation system, a people-moving attraction guests could take around the park to get from land to land. It was very slow. It wasn't really an attraction where you'd see show scenes or anything like that. It was definitely a mode of transportation, and it closed shortly after the park's opening because not a lot of people used it, and when it's underutilized, why keep it operating? Tom Sawyer Island. But don't worry, my friends, there are tons of remnants of the Discovery Riverboats if you know where to look, mainly around Discovery Island. That's where they get their name. After you get through the oasis at the entrance to the park, while you're crossing the bridge to head toward the Tree of Life, stop on the bridge for a moment and look to your right-hand side. You may notice a large river and a small shack with a blue tin roof and a little blue fence. This was formerly one of the loading stations for the Discovery Riverboats. Here is a photo of it in its heyday without all of the lily pads and probably cobwebs and wild animals infesting the loading area. Either that or just boxes of merchandise and extra food stuff that they need to store somewhere. But this is what that loading station looked like while it was being used for the very short amount of time it was being used, I guess. Another abandoned station could be seen in Africa during the walkover from, I believe, Pandora on your left-hand side. Beyond it, you can see the main bridge to Harambe there, but on the right-hand side, that is another abandoned loading station for the Discovery Riverboats, and here is a photograph of it during its heyday. It looks like the dock was basically just entirely dismantled. A few of the posts still remain, but again, there's not much left here, which is kind of sad. I always am a proponent of modes of transportation, people moving attractions to get people from point A to point B. And while this may have been a short-lived, unreliable, slow, boring people-moving attraction, I still think there'd be some charm in it. And while, yes, a lot of people did say that the Discovery River boats were boring, there was more to the boats than just getting from point A to point B very slowly. There were a couple of theming elements, I hesitate to call them show scenes, along the way, the most popular and infamous of which being the Dragon's Cave, teasing the upcoming expansion that would never be built, Beastly Kingdom, which is where Pandora is located today. You used to go past a dragon's cave with smoke bellowing out and impaled knights on sticks keeping guard. I guess they're dead, so not much they can do there. And yes, just like the docks, the Dragon's Cave still does exist today. And even a little tiny dragon rock formation left over is still there and easily spottable while you're near Pandora. And for our last surviving remnant from Animal Kingdom, I want to move to the premier e-ticket, in my opinion, of Disney's Animal Kingdom, the best ride in the park, Kilimanjaro Safaris. Enjoy a trek through the wilds of Africa, seeing many different African animals, including lions, sometimes rhinos, elephants, giraffes, zebras, and my favorite, the Ankole cattle. Did you know that their horns are mostly hollow? There's just a honeycomb-like structure inside of it. It keeps them cool. Yeah, I learned that on Kilimanjaro Safaris. Anyway, when Disney's Animal Kingdom first opened in '98, the ride was a bit different, where nowadays it's more of just a tour of the preserve, pointing out the animals and some facts about them before returning to the loading, or I guess unloading zone. Back in 1998 and the preceding years, there was a storyline to go along with this attraction, a storyline that revolved around poaching and how bad poaching is not just for the animals that are being killed, but also for the environment around them and for the planet, and for all of us, for that matter.
Harambe Wildlife Reserve was created to meet the growing challenges that face our native wildlife here in Africa. Expanding human population is bringing with it a loss of natural habitat, threatening the very existence of our great creatures. Sadly, even the borders of Harambe cannot protect our animals from the most dangerous threat of all, poaching.
Guests were originally riding aboard the Simba 1 and were contacted by the game warden in order to go investigate some claims of poaching within the borders of the Harambe Wildlife Preserve, the ride. And so, our task while riding Kilimanjaro Safari is not just take in the beautiful scenery, see some animals and learn about them, and sit in the hot Central Florida sun, but also to maybe put an end to the poaching activities that may or may not be going on within the reserve. Spoiler alert, they are going on, and you see a dead elephant. I'm gonna show a photo of it now. Just know that this is completely fake. It's a figure that was made for the ride. It's not a real dead elephant. This, my friends, is Big Red, the elephant that was sadly killed and poached by the poachers. Earlier reports stated that the poachers had captured Big Red and her young calf, her baby, Little Red, and you find that Big Red sadly didn't make it, but Little Red happily did, and she sits in the back of one of the game warden's trucks. In the original attraction, a cast member dressed as the game warden would engage in a shootout with the poachers. This, of course, was cut later on. But the safe Little Red in the back of the game warden's Jeep remained for a very long time after the attraction's opening, and would only be removed in 2012, and as far as I know, she still sits backstage in that same Jeep, motionless. You know, she's not plugged in, but Little Red still exists, so I guess that's a little mini remnant of an opening day attraction. But there are other references to Big Red and Little Red and the original storyline for Kilimanjaro Safari if you know where to look. How about we go ahead and start with the bridge? You see, originally when you drove across that busted up old bridge in the later half of the attraction, there would be an effect where the bridge itself would actually move with the truck on it, giving the effect that the bridge was about to collapse, and this was extremely terrifying, but also kind of fun. It's admittedly one of my earliest memories of visiting a Disney park, but I do remember when this effect worked, and it was kind of just like a little thrill ride break in the middle of this Africa tour. It was a great time.
Next. Remember that last one? We get close to the end, it's starting to rattle a little bit like the boards were loose. Well, this one's droning, folks, and that's a lot worse. Hang on, folks. Lead to the right. That did it. Hang on, let me get off this bridge. Wow, that was close. Everybody okay back there?
A very cool effect and a fun little show scene just in the middle of the ride. And now, sadly, obviously the effect is deactivated. Sometimes they won't even mention the bridge as you're driving over it. Sometimes they will, but sadly the effect no longer works.
You can see it is being held together with rusty cables, so Hakuna Matata. No worries. No worries at all.
I'm telling you, this scene would be so much more exciting if the bridge just randomly started shaking. I think everybody would be in for a bit of a good surprise. But rewinding a little bit to the I'm gonna show the dead elephant again, Big Red and Little Red storyline, there are a few remnants to the story that you can still find, this time in the standby queue to this day. Mainly a poster in the main office telling fans to come see us, Big Red and her calf, Little Red, just two of Harambe's famous wild animals. Oh, sorry, Big Red. Now, the reason as to why Disney decided to cut the conservation and poaching message from Kilimanjaro Safari is up for debate. Obviously, the original storyline with the corpse of the dead elephant is a little intense, especially for the younger guests who found themselves aboard the attraction, but I don't see why they had to cut all of the story. Cutting the shootout, fine. The bridge effect not working anymore, that's whatever. Time goes by, effects break. While the cast member still does talk about conservation and how we can help these animals, it's not part of the story, it's part of the spiel that they're giving us. Having just a small mention of poaching and us going out and searching for Little Red at the beginning of the attraction and then finding her in the back of the Jeep at the end of the attraction has that little through line of storytelling that Disney is known for. I feel like that, to me, personally, would have been an improvement. Now, all of that being said, it still doesn't take away from my enjoyment of Kilimanjaro Safaris. Like I mentioned, it's my favorite ride at Animal Kingdom, and I think if you wanted to ride an attraction that perfectly encapsulates what the park is about, Kilimanjaro Safaris is it. I highly recommend going on it first thing in the morning, skipping Flight of Passage, because you get to see those lions. And now we can move over to Disney California Adventure, the newest Disney park in the United States, opening in 2001. And I gotta say, doing this segment for Disney California Adventure was actually pretty difficult. There is not a corner of that park that hasn't been changed or rethemed or updated since opening. I mean, Paradise Gardens kind of still exists. I mean, Jumping Jellyfish is an opening day attraction, so I guess that could be an entry on the list. Just go ride Jumping Jellyfish, and that right there is a remnant of opening day, but that's not quite what we're talking about here. I want to find remnants of an opening day Disney California Adventure attraction, or just anything from opening day that is still there and is still viewable, accessible to us guests. Where do you start with that? Red Car Trolley, that's gone. It wasn't from opening day. Bountiful Valley Farms in Avengers Campus, that's not a remnant, it's just a reference. Man, you know, like I said, this is really hard, so I guess we're gonna have to dig deep into the lore books for this one. We're gonna have to find just a little something that remains from 2001. Now, if you ever find yourself over by Goofy's Sky School, a retheme of Mulholland Madness from the opening day of California Adventure, look for the bathrooms. Not because they're especially good bathrooms or anything, they're fine, but they are themed to Route 66. The theming of the bathroom, of course, not having changed since opening day of California Adventure. It's certainly not Goofy's Sky School themed. Yeah, we're starting off here with the restroom. I gotta admit, not the strongest start to the remnants of old California Adventure, but don't worry, we're working our way up, okay, to the cool ones. Soarin'. I suppose every spring for the Food and Wine Festival, they retheme Soarin' Over the World to the opening day attraction Soaring Over California. Again, not a reference, they just bring it back. Of course, you have the famous reskinning of the Superstar Limo figures, animatronics, into the CDA. Also figures, animatronics in Monsters, Inc. Mike and Sully to the Rescue. Now, be sure to go and see these figures at least one more time on your next visit, because the Hollywood backlot will be transforming into the world of Avatar. I'm very excited for this change. And so this remnant is subject to when you watch this video, because if you're watching this next year or even the year after that or any time in the future, this ride does not exist anymore. Hey, would you look at that? There's Jackie Chan. See, I told you they were still left in this ride. Now, where's Drew Carey? Oh, yeah, there. There he is. Let's just go to the next one, please. Here's a really interesting one. Did you know that there used to be waves crashing against the shore in Paradise Bay, right up against California Screamin', now the Incredicoaster? You can see it here in this photo, it's real. Of course, sadly, there are no waves today. Imagine just a giant one coming over and hitting you as soon as you're about to launch on the Incredicoaster. That would be great. But you can still see the wave machine or the wave panels. If, for whatever reason, you get a view of the underside of the dock just across from the Incredicoaster launch point, you might be able to catch a glimpse of the old wave machine panels. Here they are underneath the boardwalk. They would push water in and out, creating the waves that would splash up against the launch. And while I think this was a really cool touch, it helped to build immersion, makes you feel like you're in an actual beach, I do believe the reason they turned them off was because of World of Color. And World of Color, an entire nighttime spectacular in exchange for some waves in the bay, I think is a fair trade. I would take that trade. But I won't lie, remember the year there when World of Color was just completely out of commission? They had to almost entirely rebuild the barges. They could have turned on the wave machine then. That would have been nice. Silly Symphony Swings used to be in orange. That counts. Now for this next one, let's stay in Paradise Gardens Park and look instead from Silly Symphony Swings to Ariel's Undersea Adventure, or more aptly, the full name of the attraction, which is a mouthful, The Little Mermaid Ariel's Undersea Adventure. A fun little dark ride that takes you through the story of the Little Mermaid. And while you can tell when you're on board the attraction that it was built on a budget, those animatronics are kind of terrifying. Ursula's cool though. Ursula looks great. This ride did end up replacing an opening day attraction. Not a ride, but instead a show called Golden Dreams, hosted by Whoopi Goldberg. Whoopi starred as Califia, the Queen of California, first introduced in a novel in 1510. I mean, she's not a historic figure or anything. Califia was fictional, but I guess 1510 is history, so she's kind of a fictional historical character. The novel was called The Adventures of Espel Dian, written by Garcia Rodriguez de Montalvo. In the novel, she is a warrior queen who ruled over a kingdom of Amazons on the island of California. Not the state of California, an island off the coast of Asia called California. We'll get to the US in a second. Now, Califia doesn't really have a happy ending. She's bested in battle, taken prisoner, and forcibly married off to somebody, so not a great ending for her to say the least. That's actually really tragic. When Spanish explorers began charting the territory that we now know today as the Western United States, mainly California and Mexico, the peninsula that was attached to the westernmost side of what is now Mexico brought to mind the stories of Queen Califia, and so the landmass was named after her fictional island, California. As you can see in this 1562 map, if we zoom way in there, bam, the first written name California referring to this landmass ever. Eventually, the land north of the peninsula would be known as Alta California, or Upper California. When American settlers decided to set up camp in Sonoma, they decided to rebel against Mexican rule and declare their own little mini republic, naming it after the area they were in, obviously the California Republic, which is where the flag comes from. And then eventually, when the California Republic and the whole area was acquired and annexed into the United States, the whole state became known as just California. And now, after all of that, after that big long history lesson, we have California Adventure. Pretty cool, right? That's all necessary explanation to talk about Golden Dreams, starring Whoopi Goldberg, by the way.
Can I make an entrance or can I make an entrance? You don't have a clue who I am, do you? My name's Califia, as in California. You see, a long, long time ago, this Spanish writer dreamed of a land dripping with gold, with a ruler more beautiful, more exciting, and more fun than all the rest.
The Art Deco statues of Califia on either side of the screen would come to life, using technology very similar to what we have in the Haunted Mansion with Madame Leota to make them talk. The show was essentially a documentary on the history of California, starting with indigenous peoples and moving all the way up to present day. And Califia, of course being here the whole time, would insert herself into the stories, or I guess just she's been there the entire time. She's an immortal spirit. I actually highly recommend checking out the show. It's very well made and well filmed, surprisingly for a Disney Parks movie. I'll link it down below, and while I am not a Californian, I feel like watching it would make you very proud to be a Californian. And of course, the entire show was housed in a smaller replica of the Palace of Fine Arts from San Francisco. which itself is a rebuilt version of the Palace of Fine Arts from the Panama Pacific International Exposition, essentially a World's Fair from 1915. Now, if you know anything about World's Fairs, be that the Columbian Exposition or the 1964-1965 New York World's Fair that Disney was a part of, you know that the structures that they build for these fairs are only meant to last for the duration of the fair. And so, by 1964, it was beginning to crumble away, so it was entirely demolished and a brand new version was built from the ground up with more stable materials. All of this coming around to the facade for The Little Mermaid Ariel's Undersea Adventure, which does not feature the original color scheme from Golden Dreams, which was the original color scheme of the Palace of Fine Arts. Instead, it is painted a much brighter color. Nautical colors, you could say. And while I do think it's sort of a shame that the original Palace of Fine Arts color scheme did not stay, I'm glad that the facade itself stayed, because it has nothing to do with The Little Mermaid. They could have removed it completely. Just a little piece of California history going back more than 100 years that still remains at California Adventure, when the references to California are slowly being removed one by one as the years go by. Are the animatronics for The Little Mermaid Ariel's Undersea Adventure scary? Yes. Are the animatronics for Under the Sea Journey of the Little Mermaid also scary? Yes. Are they the same ride with completely different names for some reason? Yes! Disney, figure it out, please, I'm begging you. But even if you don't like the spooky animatronics, or if you do like them and you want to go on the ride, take a moment to sit out in front of that Palace of Fine Arts, admire it for a second before you go in, because that is a bona fide piece of not just California history, but Disney California Adventure history. That is the end of the DCA segment. How did I do? Taught you about the Queen. You didn't think you were coming into this video learning about the Queen, did you? So whether you're a fan of Epcot Center or the Magic Kingdom or Disney's California Adventure, I hope you could find something in this hour-long video that you enjoyed. I hope you could find a remnant of one of your favorite rides that you remember from growing up, or a ride that you wish you could have gone on from before you were around, before you were going on all these Disney attractions. For me, it's Horizons, but that wasn't an opening day attraction. Which reminds me, I tried to keep it to mostly opening day attractions and rides in this video. I think I went off script 1 or 2 times there. But if you're thinking of something that I didn't mention, and it's about Horizons or Journey into Imagination, maybe it's about 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, maybe it's about Alien Encounter, I did just want to stick to the opening day rides for this video. But let me know down in the comments below, what are your favorite abandoned remnants or just remnants, references, homages to older Disney rides? I want to know down in the comments, because they're all super interesting to me. I'm never disinterested by a piece of Disney history that Disney just refuses to clean up. And Disney, if you're watching this video, Imagineers, theming, park ops, leave a couple things. Just leave them lying around. A pair of Muppet Vision glasses, maybe a bottle of the Rivers of America water somewhere canned in the new Cars experience, the new Piston Peak land. I'd be okay with that. Let me look at what used to be the Rivers of America. Oh, which reminds me, a remnant of an opening day Disney Parks attraction, the Rivers of America. If you look very, very closely behind this door, I know you can't see much behind it, that's why Disney put it there, you might be able to catch a glimpse, just a small little glimpse of an opening day attraction that was present at the Magic Kingdom, the Rivers of America. Sadly, that opening day attraction has been closed for about a week now, but for the very short time they're still filled in, if you're at the Magic Kingdom, head past the Haunted Mansion, head past the Hall of Presidents, or past Big Thunder Mountain or Tiana's Bayou Adventure, and take a look at those Rivers of America. They used to be a ride, and it's just sitting there, abandoned, to this day. This day, of course, being July 12th. If you don't believe me, look at the date I uploaded this video. Hey there, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching this video on abandoned remnants, or maybe not abandoned isn't the right word, maybe just remnants of opening day Disney Parks attractions. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit the like button, and if you're new around here and you want more videos like this one, it's a long one, please be sure to hit the subscribe button. This one's a little different. I planned to make it almost exactly an hour long. We'll see how that goes. I planned all of the different park segments to last how long they did. So I'm pretty confident. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I think it turned out okay. Be sure to let me know your thoughts on this down in the description below. And if you've made it to the end card at the end of this hour-long video, we have to have a code word. That code word should be, I don't know, what should it be? Ooh, maybe because it opened so close to park opening but wasn't technically an opening day attraction, put Flight to the Moon, or maybe just Moon. Put the word Moon in your comment if you've made it this far in the video, and if I see it, I will try to give it a like. There's going to be some comments to sift through, but I will try to give it a like if you put the word Moon in your comment. If you want to follow me on my Patreon, it will be linked in the description down below. Even just $1 a month will get you access to most of the perks, including early video access and exclusive Q&A access that I have been sort of planning here for a couple of days. It's going to be coming out, I think, in the next week or two. Probably 2 weeks when that whole test track video deal is going to go down. It's going to be a lot of fun. I hope to see you all there at Epcot on the opening day of Test Track 3. It's just $1. Patreon is, by the way. If you want to pledge $1 or more, you can. But if you'd rather follow me for free, you absolutely can do that on other social media sites, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. That is the end of this video, though, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. I have to make sure this hits an hour. It has to be exactly 1 hour. Thank you all so much for watching. I will see you in next week's video. Goodbye. An hour, 14 seconds? No, I overshot it. I overshot it by 14 seconds? How do I do that?